I used to think there was something wrong with my ears. At first, it was just strange sounds. A small screeching sound, like metal being dragged across concrete. Then came the sighs close to my ear, even though I was alone in the room. Once, I woke up in the middle of the night because I clearly heard someone whisper, "Listen." I live alone on the third floor of an old apartment building on the outskirts. The tiles are chipped, the hallway is stained with mold, and the creaking sounds from the apartments seem louder at night. But what worried me wasn't the noise. It was the sudden silence that followed, as if the whole world was holding its breath. Last week, Mrs. Sylvia from the apartment next to mine went missing, an old woman who almost never left her home. The police found the door locked, the kettle still boiling, and a human ear lying in the middle of the kitchen floor. No blood, no signs of a struggle, just the dry, shriveled ear, clean as though someone had carefully detached it and wiped it clean. I can't forget that image. Even though I only heard it from the local police officer, a young man fresh out of school, pale as a corpse as he recounted that ear. It didn't look like it had been cut from a body. It looked like it had been kept as something to display. The next night, I was awakened by a knock at the door at 2 a.m. 3 knocks, very faint. I stepped out, my heart pounding, but the hallway was completely empty. No one. Just one thing lying in front of my door. An old wired headset, its plastic casing worn. There was a small blood stain on the cord. I don't know why I did it, but I picked it up. When I put the headset to my ear, only one side still worked. And from that side, I heard someone whispering. A raspy voice, but clear, slow, as if each word was dragged from a blood-soaked throat. The final sound still echoes. I yanked it off, but the whisper didn't stop. I could still hear it, inside my ear, beneath the skin, even when I plugged my ear shut. The next day, I went to find Gerald, the single man who lived on the 5th floor. He was the only one who had ever told me he'd heard the voice in the ear. I remember he had drunk almost half a bottle of liquor before daring to confess. He said, "There's something. It goes through the walls. It doesn't show itself. It hears you. And if you listen again, it will come to take that." When I knocked on Gerald's apartment, no one answered. The door was unlocked, decayed. It was as if they had been preserved somehow. I bent down close to one particular ear, large, dark in color, with fine hairs on the edge. Underneath it read, "The first sound I ever heard." I didn't know who I was here, Gerald or someone else. And then a sound echoed from the small speaker on the desk. "Did you hear it?" I ran out of that apartment, but the sound followed me, inside my head, as if another voice was living in my ear. After that incident, the police came again, but they didn't find any ears. No paper, no collected wall. The room was empty, as if someone had cleaned it in one night. They told me I was hallucinating due to stress. But I knew what I had seen, and I knew something was listening to me. Last night, when I looked in the bathroom mirror, I saw a small scratch on my left ear. It had just appeared. Right next to it was a faint pencil mark, as if someone had marked the cutting spot. After leaving Gerald's apartment, I couldn't sleep for 3 straight nights. I put in earplugs, played white noise, took sleeping pills, but nothing stopped that whisper. It wasn't loud, just a faint, broken voice, but enough to break my nerves. And there was something off about the way it spoke. No emotion, no tone, as if it wasn't a human voice. Every time I was about to fall asleep, the words would echo. "It's time. Give it to me." I started to investigate. I scoured local news pages, forums, social media, any piece of information about strange disappearances, and I found a recurring pattern. A college student named Jace, who disappeared last month, left behind a blood-stained Bluetooth headset in the library. A woman named Marla, a switchboard operator, was found dead in her room, her left ear completely hollowed out, and her right ear had a syringe mark on the eardrum. A 10-year-old child, missing while sleeping, left behind a scribbled note in pencil. "I don't want to hear anymore." I collected this information like an addict. The more I read, the colder my spine became. Almost every victim had one thing in common. Before disappearing, they complained about hearing voices in their heads. I decided to find one person, Lucille, an old blind woman living 4 blocks away. She used to be a vocal coach, but lost her sight and hearing over 10 years ago in a car accident. I read in an old interview that she once said, "The ears are the windows to the soul. If someone wants to take your final sound, they must enter through that path." I went on a rainy afternoon, and it took nearly 10
meant for humans. To hear them is a curse.
I shuddered. She was silent for a long while, then took something from the drawer beside her. A small glass jar, inside which was a dry, shriveled human ear, twisted like burned paper. This was my husband's. He was a musician. He became obsessed with a sound he called the death note. It doesn't exist in this world. He heard it and cut off his own ear to keep that music forever. Before he died, he whispered to me, not with his mouth, but through his ear. I nearly dropped the hot tea in my hand. Lucille grabbed my hand, tighter than I expected. "If you hear it, the call, don't respond. Because if you let it into your ear, it won't leave anymore." That night, I dreamt I was tied to a chair in a pitch-black room. In front of me was a man in a long coat, his face covered by a rough human skin mask with ears sewn onto it. He didn't say anything. He just turned on an old tape recorder. From it, a sound echoed. Screams, sobs, pleas, like a symphony from hell. I woke up, my heart racing, and this time my right ear was bleeding. Just a small drop, but I knew that was the sign. The next day, I returned to Gerald's apartment, carrying a flashlight and a recorder. The apartment was sealed, but I had the old key he had given me to borrow. When I stepped inside, the light didn't work. The air inside was thick with the smell of mold and old, rotting flesh. I turned on the recorder and began recording. In the bedroom, I found a small wooden box, locked with a simple latch. I pried it open. Inside were 7 human ears arranged in a circle. In the center was a cassette tape. No label, no title. I don't know why, but I still played it. And when the sound from the tape played, I stood frozen. It wasn't music. It wasn't words. It was my voice, my scream, my plea, and finally, my whisper. I'm ready. Take my ear. I don't remember how I left Gerald's apartment. All I know is that my voice, my actual voice, kept echoing in my head all night long, like a tape stuck in a loop. Take my ear. Take my ear. I couldn't tell which voice was real and which one was from it. There were times I thought, "Where did you get this?" I told him the truth. He clicked his tongue, then plugged the headphones into the machine and played it. In just a few seconds, his face turned pale. He yanked the headphones off like he'd been shocked by electricity, whispering, "No, this isn't a recording. It broadcasts live. Do you understand? You're hearing someone right now. Maybe it's even you." I froze. This isn't a music tape. It's a conduit, like a communication channel. But what's at the other end is not human. That information led me to a place, an abandoned sewing factory on the outskirts. Once a production site for military-grade noise-canceling headphones in the 1960s. Old articles mentioned that the factory had closed after dozens of workers committed suicide within a few months. Some reports noted they all exhibited severe auditory hallucinations. I don't know why I ended up there in the middle of the night. All I knew was that a voice echoed in my head, familiar, smooth, as though I was calling myself. The exit is inside. The factory was nestled in the middle of a reed field, far from the main road. The concrete walls were cracked, the tin roof collapsed, and the wooden doors rotted. I stepped inside, carrying a flashlight, a pocket knife, and a small recorder hidden in my jacket. Inside, everything looked abandoned in a hurry, machinery covered in dust, chairs still holding strands of hair. But what made my blood run cold was a wall completely covered in human ears, each carefully hung on hooks like in a lab. There was no blood. They were perfectly preserved, the skin wrinkled like porcelain doll ears. Beneath each ear was a small piece of paper. The man praying at 4 a.m. The girl screamed when she saw her mother hanging. The last person to hear their own voice. I didn't realize I was trembling, not from the cold, but from the sound. There was a faint, almost inaudible hiss in the air, but enough to make my head ache as if it were being struck by a hammer. I looked around. Each ear emitted its own sound. Each one was a recording, like a haunted radio station playing the final moments of the victim. And then I saw him. From the darkness at the end of the room, someone was standing, tall, thin, hunched, cloaked in a long black robe that touched the ground. His face was unclear, only visible a network of human ears sewn together, covering his head like a living skin mask. I froze. He reached out, a long, bony hand, the tips of his fingers streaked with red veins. He held a black velvet box. When he opened it, inside were 2 hollow ears. No inner ear, no eardrum, just 2 empty holes like bottomless pits. And then he spoke. Not with his mouth, but through his ear. The sound reverberated in my head, so deep it felt like every nerve was being torn apart. Everything behind. The recorder, the knife, even my sanity. I didn't look back, but from that day on, I couldn't hear anything anymore. In my left ear. Just an absolute silence. And in that silence, I could still hear him. I left the sewing factory in a half-mad state. The darkness outside could not compare to what I had just seen in that room. The cold light emanating from the dead ears. They didn't need eyes to watch me. They could hear me. I locked my door, drew the curtains, shoved a blanket under the crack of the door, and taped the windows shut. I no longer trusted the light, the sounds, or even my own voice. Every noise became a threat. Every whisper could be it. but I couldn't stop listening. 3 days later, I woke up in the bathroom, my whole body trembling, dried blood around my right ear. I couldn't remember what I had done. On the mirror, with my blood-stained fingertip, I wrote a few words. "You're talking to yourself." I trembled, hurriedly wiping the mirror clean. But in the mirror, right behind me, I saw a shadow flicker. I turned around. No one. But I heard a faint hiss. A quiet laugh seeping through the walls like a needle pricking my eardrum. I called the police. I told them everything. The wall of ears, the cassette tape, Gerald's name, the mask sewn from human ears. I told them with all the desperation I could muster. They came, then they left. No one believed me. No one heard it. That night, I tried something crazy. I plugged the old headphones I had found outside my door back in. My left ear no longer heard, so I put the headphones in my right ear. Silence. A moment later, a sound like metal scraping a guitar string. Then, from inside the headphones, a familiar voice rang. "You've heard too much already. Now it's time to return it." I jumped, throwing the headphones to the floor. The room shook. Not for real, but in my mind, every sound shattered. Laughter, screams, a child's cry, someone whispering, "Please, don't take my ear." I collapsed. And I saw him. I woke up, tied tightly to a cold metal chair. The room around me was pitch black, but I knew where I was, the old sewing factory. No one needed to bring me here. I had come myself, or worse, he had come inside me. From the darkness ahead, he stepped forward, tall, his form twisted as if contorted. His face had no eyes, nose, or mouth, just a mask made from sewn-together ears. He said nothing. He didn't need to. I heard his raising his hand, long, bony fingers, each tip carrying a small ear like a parasite. They twitched. I screamed inside my head, but no sound escaped. Then he stopped. His fingers touched my left ear, the one that was deaf. He tilted his head, as if surprised. No tone, no sound. He prodded it, like a broken object. You've lost it. Your soul is empty here." He stepped back, deep in thought. His hand swept across the row of human ears hanging from the ceiling. Each one resonated with a horrifying sound, as if twisted. But when it came to me, he hesitated. A silence stretched so long, I thought I had died. Then he leaned in close to my face, the ear mask pressed against my skin, each ear twitching, vibrating with his breath. "If I can't take your ear," he raised the knife, "I'll take your final sound." Suddenly, a loud explosion rang out from outside. The factory's doors were blown open. Flashlights flickered, voices screamed. The police. They found me, unconscious, in the chair, with no signs of anyone else. No ears, no mask, no knife, no recorder. Just me, and a blood-written message on the wall behind me. "Do you think you survived?" I thought I had been saved. I woke up in the hospital, my limbs trembling, my left ear still completely deaf, and my right ear. Everything had become worse. It wasn't a voice. It wasn't a whisper. It was music, if that can even be called music. It had no melody, no rhythm, just a series of living sounds, writhing, like flesh being torn, like vocal cords being stretched, like an echoing choir of the dying. And it kept repeating, never stopping, never ending. I was kept for a few days to monitor my mental state. The police said they found me alone, tied to a chair in the old factory. They didn't find anyone else. No evidence, no human ears, no mask, no cassette tape. The only thing beside me was an old pair of headphones, inside which was a single recording lasting 11 seconds. I listened to that tape. Once. Only once. And since then, I couldn't stop hearing it. On the tape, there was heavy breathing, the sound of someone running, a loud crash, then silence. Next was my voice, whispering as if strangled. Please, I don't want to hear any more.
Doesn't need a body. It needs the memory of the final sound. The human ear is a vessel, like a record. When cut, it holds on to that moment. Forever. I went silent. The collector didn't just want the ear. He wanted the final moment, the deathly music of the soul. I began dreaming of years hanging around me in the dark. Each one spoke a different voice. I didn't get to say goodbye. Please, don't let him take my ear. Can you hear it? He's coming. And every time I woke up, I found I had recorded my dream. I didn't remember when. I didn't remember how. Once, I played the recording back, and I heard my mother's voice. She passed away 8 years ago. Son, don't listen anymore. You're letting him in. I threw the recorder against the wall. It shattered, but her voice still continued to echo from my ear. A week later, I received a package. No sender's name, no address. Just a small glass jar, inside which was a dry, shriveled human ear, accompanied by a note. Yours, from the future. I collapsed. I couldn't leave the house. I taped up both ears, wore a hood, and lived in complete silence. But the more silent it became, the more I could hear. I began to understand. It wasn't outside anymore. It was inside me. Not a parasite, not a demon. It was a kind of sound wave, a mental one. It existed through memory, through the final sound before death. And every time someone hears that final recording, their soul becomes part of that symphony. I once believed that I survived, but now I know. I'm just the next recording. I don't remember the last time I heard a real sound, not the chirping of birds or the laughter of people, not footsteps or the wind blowing through the crack in the door, but an absolute silence, a kind of living silence, breathing, scraping at my eardrum from the inside. Silence, like a song being choked just before it becomes a note. I tried everything to escape him. I unplugged every wire in the house. I smashed every speaker, phone, TV, even the alarm clock. I lived in an empty room, covered with soundproofing materials, thick blankets on the walls, black cloth covering the vents, and I no longer spoke. Because every time I spoke, I heard the echo, not my voice, but his voice. Well done. Stay silent, and I'll keep my part of the deal. But last night, everything changed. I woke up at midnight because something warm dripped down my face. It was blood, from my right ear. I looked in the mirror, and horror struck as I realized the skin around the rim of my ear was starting to peel off, as if it were falling away, as if my ear was being reclaimed. I cried. He was recording me right now. I ran to my mailbox, searching for hope, searching for any sign of the real world, something to prove that I still existed. And I found a small package, no sender, no postmark. Inside was a black, smooth USB drive.
I plugged it into my computer, in my soundproof room. The only folder was named EAR00137 final.wave. I trembled as I opened it. Inside was the only sound, lasting 33 minutes and 12 seconds. It was my voice, every breath, every step. Every question I repeated in panic. And then, at the 31st minute, there was a knock on the door. 3 knocks, slowly, echoing like it was struck inside my chest. Thump, thump, thump. I froze. Then I heard my own voice. I don't want to hear any more. A silence. Then his voice. You are already part of the recording. Every person who listens to this recording will continue after you. I pulled out the USB and threw it against the wall. But the laptop screen still played the sound. No wires, no hard drive, but the tape kept playing, repeating, repeating, repeating. I started to understand. I'm not the main character. I'm just a track in the collection. Every victim, a recording. Every ear, a final sound. And when someone listens again, the recording comes to life. It passes to another person's ear, and he gains another soul. I'm typing this not to ask for help, but to warn you, because I know, after I finish, he will keep this story. He'll package it, send it, or upload it somewhere. And when you read these lines, you may have already heard something, a small sound, a breath, a whisper in your ear. You're listening, aren't you? Don't take off the headphones. Don't plug your ears. Don't scream, because the more you try to stay silent, the clearer he will hear.